everyone. Today I want to share with you the books that I read in the last half of June. If you wanted to see the books I read in the first half, I'll link my mid-June wrap-up down below. But I have 6 books to talk about, and for the most part, I enjoyed everything I read. I only had 1 3-star, and the rest were 4 and 5-star, and even the 3-star was, fine. 3 stars isn't bad or anything, so it's pretty good that I feel like second half of June went well. So let's just do the order, that I enjoy them. So we'll start with the 3-star, move into the 4 stars and the 5-star. So my 3-star book was Radio Silence by Alice Oseman, and this was one that I had read the beginning in a Triad Chapter Unhaul edition, and I was getting really into it, and so I was like, okay, I want to keep this. I'll go ahead and read it. And I finished it pretty soon after that Triad Chapter. And for this one, my 3 stars was just totally my personal preference, and also like maybe a little bit of my age and experience that I totally understand why a lot of people really love this book and why a lot of people give it 5 stars, and it's one of their favorite books. And if I was younger, maybe I would also agree, but it just didn't connect with me, and I think a lot of that was my age, because this is so rooted in like end of high school, college admissions, and kind of the pressures that come at that time. And so I was just, after a while, I was enjoying the character and everything, but after a while I was just like, I was kind of getting tired of just hearing about those things. So I guess I didn't really say what this is about. So this follows a girl named Frances, and so she is kind of towards the end of her high school experience, and she is trying to get into Cambridge, and all the pressures that are involved trying to get into a prestigious school like that. And so we kind of go through like everything that's going on in her personal life and her school life and her whole admissions process. But then also another big part of this is that she makes friends with this boy during this book, and just kind of their friendship and how it affects her life as well. And I really did enjoy the fact that this book does not have a romance in it, that it was just about a platonic friendship and the importance of friends and things like that. That part I really enjoyed. I really liked that we just focused on friends and all that, and that relationships could be more than just romance, because I feel like on a lot of books, especially books in this time period of people's lives, that it focuses more on a romance. So I liked that it was about a friendship, but like I said, I just don't think that I really connected to the fact that she was doing all this prep for college, because I'm just not in that zone. And there's nothing wrong with that plot line, but I have read a few books that have revolved around this whole like the pressures of getting into college and stuff like that the last couple years, and when I look back, I've given them all 2 or 3 stars. I've either just got they were like fine or didn't like them. This one was just fine for me, and so I think that I just need to stop reading books about that topic. That obviously that doesn't interest me, but I totally understand why other people love this book, and if it's something that you're interested in, like that whole pressures of high school and college admissions, then I would still say it's a good book, and I would recommend it. It just, that topic, I should just stop reading in general. Like, I just know that I'm not going to enjoy a book that's about that. And then moving on, I have 4 4-star books. So the first one I'll talk about is Hairpin Bridge by Taylor Adams, and this is a brand new release. I think it just came out in June. Yeah, so it was a June release, and this is a thriller. Taylor Adams had written No Exit, which was really big on BookTube a couple years ago. I really enjoyed that one. I felt the same way about this one. It is a solid, fun, like quickly moving along type of thriller, but not like a huge amount of substance or anything like that, and kind of beyond the point of believability in a lot of areas, but just pure entertainment. And that's how I felt about No Exit 2. This is following a woman named Lena, who her sister had died a few years previously. It was put down as a suicide that her sister jumped off of this bridge. And so this is, I think, taking place 3 to 6 months. I can't remember how long it is after her sister has died, and she is going to this bridge where her sister died, and it wants to interview the cop who found her body, and wants to kind of find out some answers of what happened in her sister's last moments leading up to her death and all that stuff. And the thing that I am really impressed about Taylor Adams, that both of the books that I've read by him have hardly any characters. Like this one has less than 5 characters. I don't want to say exactly the amount, but less than 5 characters in this book, and is basically all taking place at this bridge. Like that is like the main setting, and just like No Exit was a small amount of characters and just taking place mostly at a rest stop. I think it's very impressive that somebody can write with that few characters and in one location for the majority of a book and still have twists and turns and surprises along the way. Not saying that it's like the best thriller ever. Like I said, there were some things that I didn't quite believe, but I was like surprised along the way. I did find it entertaining the whole way through. So solid 4-star thriller for me. If you liked No Exit, you're probably going to like this one. If you didn't, I also think you wouldn't like this one probably, because I do think his style is very similar between the two books. But yeah, just a fun, entertaining read. And then next I read Seabound by Jordan Rivet. This is the first in a dystopian trilogy, and I thought this was really interesting in the dystopian world, because there's not a lot of books, I feel like, with this type of setting. So what this is following a group of survivors after there was a huge volcanic eruption in the United States that sent ash over a lot of the earth, causing places of land to be uninhabitable. And then like countries that were still inhabitable like closed up all their borders so they could protect their population, not overpopulate the area. And so a bunch of people from North America had to go onto boats. And this is taking place 16 years after that big disaster. So they've been living on water for a while now. And we are following Esther, who is a young woman. She's like 22. So she has been living on this boat the majority of her life. Like she was a young child when she went on this cruise ship. And so this is a smaller cruise ship. There's about 1,000 people on board that they are just all pitching in and surviving on the sea. So the beginning of this, we're just kind of learning how they are surviving on this cruise ship, how they are all have a job and all that stuff, and the different dynamics on this ship. But then something happens that puts their life at risk, and they need to go and find some allies in another boat. And often they don't really communicate with other boats because, you know, they don't know who's hostile, who's not, but they need some resources that they need to trade for. And so they have to go and find another ship to trade with. And I just think it's an interesting way to write a dystopian, because, you know, a lot of dystopians don't take place on the water. Like that, maybe some of the land is uninhabitable, but they're still like taking place in one area, like that might be called a different country, you know, like Hunger Games, you know, as you know, America becomes Pan Am and all that stuff, where I thought this was really interesting that it all takes place on water and living on a cruise ship, and what that would be like living your whole life with no land, no sight of land. Like they're completely out in the ocean. I think they're in the Pacific Ocean in this one. And just like the dynamics that would happen. So I found this really interesting. I don't think it's like perfect in all the ways, because there's a lot of things that happen that you're like, okay, well that was a really dumb decision, and that dumb decision led to something else happening. And so it kind of felt convenient in that fact that, you know, like, of course, main character would make a dumb decision that would lead to this, the plot keeping going. But in general, I enjoyed this quite a lot. Obviously gave it 4 stars and want to continue the series. So if you're looking for a dystopian that takes place on water completely, I would recommend it. And this is a self-published book, so always good to support a self-published author. Next is another brand new thriller that came out in June. That is The Maidens by Michaelides. And I really enjoyed this one too. This was another 4-star solid thriller that there were parts that seemed a little too unbelievable, but in general was just really entertaining. You know, it's hard to get a full 5-star thriller because often there are elements that are a little beyond believability. But for me, to be a thriller that I would recommend, 4 stars is great and just means it's solid and entertaining. And that's how I felt with this one. This one is about a woman. We're following a woman named Mariana, who is a therapist, and she finds out about this girl who has died at Cambridge University, and her niece goes to Cambridge, and that's how she finds out about this death. And she goes to comfort her niece, and Mariana decides that the killer is this professor of Greek tragedy, and she thinks that this professor has some inappropriate relationships with a group of girls called the Maidens. And that's all I want to give you in terms of plot, so I'm just going to tell you some of the elements that I enjoyed about this that are non-spoilery and not plot specific. So one thing I really enjoyed was it did kind of weave together this whole Greek tragedies, like some of the stories of the Greek tragedies were kind of mixed in along this investigation of the murder. I also really like that we were following a therapist, just like in The Silent Patient. I don't know if the author has a history in psychology, but like I like following a therapist because in this one especially, we started to have discussions about like psychopaths and serial killers and like their mental state, like where, you know, nature versus nurture. Like, is somebody born a psychopath, or is it like based on if they aren't given love by their family and things like that as they grow up, and or is it just something innate in them that would come out later on or something like that. And so I did really enjoy that discussion just about the psychology of a killer and things like that. So I thought that was a nice element, especially like following a therapist as the main person investigating the murder. So I would recommend this. I thought it was fun. So both of these thrillers are just fun, entertaining reads, but not quite 5 stars for me. And now on to my 2 5-star reads. And I already talked about this one in the mid-year book Freakout tag, but I read Dead Voices by Katherine Arden, which is the sequel to Small Spaces. Small Spaces is kind of like following a group of kids surviving in this kind of spooky, creepy Halloween story, and I found that one really fun. I didn't find it really scary, but this one I actually found really scary. So this is following the same kids, and they are going on a winter vacation to this ski lodge, and they get trapped there in a snowstorm, and like they're the only people. It's just like them and like one other guest and like the people that own it. So it's a very small group trying to survive through a weekend of a snowstorm and things like that. And some weird ghosty type things start happening around these kids, and they're trying to figure out if they're gonna make it through the snowstorm. And this one I just found much more creepy. I don't know if it's just because the way the ghosts were portrayed and things like that. And it started from the very beginning because there was no setup needed about the kids because we already know who we are following. But right from the very beginning, there was creepy things, and I really enjoyed it. I love the atmosphere of being stuck in this snowy resort with like no way to get out because you can't drive out. You know, you obviously would get frostbitten, hypothermia if you were outside for a long amount of time. So you're stuck in this building until you're able to get out from the storm. And so I just really enjoyed all of those elements, and I like the friendship in this, the fact that these kids would do like anything for each other to help each other through things, and even if they have little arguments and stuff like that, they're still very loyal in their friendship and support of each other. So in general, strong second book in the series, and I'm looking forward to the third book coming out, I think, in August. And the last book I want to talk about is Wonderstruck by Brian Selznick. And in case you haven't read one of his books before, he's an illustrator, and so he'll tell like, in this one he tells one story's perspective, like one person's perspective in words, and then there's another person's perspective just in like full pictures, so no words. And I really enjoyed that. So we're following 2 different kids during 2 different time periods, and they're both like what's going on in their lives, the things they're struggling through. They're both going through some heavy family stuff. And there's also a focus in this about deaf culture, and one of the people that we're following is deaf, and the other one is only deaf in one ear at the beginning of the story. And so just kind of learning about that perspective in the different time periods, because I think we're in 1920s and then the 1970s, and just how people are treated with that disability during those time periods. And so I really thought this was beautiful, the way the stories interwove, and like following both the people, I was invested. I thought it was really amazing how he could tell one person's story just by the pictures, and just like getting you connected and sympathetic for a character when there is no words and you're just following along with what's happening in their life through graphics. So I thought this was amazing, 5 stars. Really interested in reading more from Brian Selznick, though everybody always says this is their favorite, so maybe I shouldn't have started out with the one that most people think is his best, but I do think he's an amazing artist. So I look forward to, if nothing else, looking at his pictures in the other books. So I would recommend this if you haven't read it already. I know a lot of people have already read this one, but if you haven't, definitely pick it up. It's a quick read, even though it looks really big. And that's all the things I read in the second half of June. If you would like to talk more about any of these books, I'd love to hear from you down below. And if you've read any newer thrillers, let me know, because I haven't read a lot of thrillers lately, but then picking up those 2, I was having a lot of fun with them. They're kind of like watching an action movie for me, where maybe I won't remember the thrillers in a couple months, but I was having a really great time while I was reading them. So if you have any recommendations of thrillers you've read recently, put those down below, because I feel like I'm in a mood to read more thrillers. So that's it for me, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.